Today's stories are all about moms and their terrifying experiences. So, sit back and enjoy. Number 1. So this happened in the early 80s, when my parents were living in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My parents lived in a 2-story duplex in a ghetto neighborhood and had never had any problem with crime or anything. My mom said that their dryer had broke a few days prior, and she was driving to a friend's house to use their dryer so she could finish up laundry. She went to her friend's house and found that they weren't there, so she started heading home. My older brother, who was around 7, let's say, was with her. She pulled into the driveway, and my brother ran inside the house. My dad was home at that time, but was taking a shower. As my mom popped the trunk to get the laundry out to bring into the house, she noticed this random black guy across the parking lot standing there, staring at her. She said the hairs on her neck immediately stood up, so she decided to wait for my dad to get the laundry. She turned her back to him to quickly close the trunk when she heard him running. She said he was running faster than she ever thought possible. She blinked and he was right up on her. He grabbed her purse and started yanking it, but never said a word. My mom, who was just becoming a citizen, had a lot of important papers in her purse for her green card, and she told him if she could just grab the papers, he could have the purse. Instead, he ended up grabbing her by her hair and started dragging her towards a dark alley in the neighborhood. My mom was screaming at the top of her lungs at this point and pleading with him to just take the purse. People's lights were on all over, but no one came out. To make her stop screaming, she said he either hit her or kicked her and he broke her jaw. Luckily, my dad, who had just got out of the shower, noticed my brother come home early and looked outside to see my mom being dragged by this guy. My dad grabbed his shotgun and ran down the stairs in only his tidy whities and started chasing the guy. The guy dropped my mom and took off. My mom said my dad chased him a good 10 minutes, but with no luck. He ran back to my mom and called 911. No one ever found the guy, and my mom completely lost her singing voice from him hitting or kicking her. My parents moved shortly after. Number 2. This is a story that my mom told me about when she first moved to America. My mom is Chinese and didn't move to America until she was 18. When she moved there, her mom and dad, as well as her younger siblings, had already been living in America for years and ran a Chinese restaurant. So anyways, my mom moved to America and obviously started working at the restaurant. She really didn't know her own parents or siblings that well, since they lived on 2 different continents for basically her entire life. Because of this, she was pretty quiet and shy. The restaurant was relatively popular with the local Chinese community, and one of the regulars was a professor at a nearby college. He was well known and respected due to his job. One day, he comes in and asks my grandparents if my mom could babysit his kid because he wanted to go out with his wife. My grandparents asked my mom if she wanted to do that, and my mom agreed. The guy was always friendly, and she decided that she could use the extra money. My grandparents didn't have a car, so the professor offered to pick her up from the restaurant and take her to his house. So the night comes, and the professor arrives at the restaurant. As always, he's very warm and friendly, and tells my grandparents how much he appreciates the help and whatnot. But then, after they drive off, things started to get kind of creepy. He kept telling my mom to relax and feeling her legs while he's driving. My mom gets scared, but since she's so shy, she doesn't know how to tell him to stop. She then thinks to herself, hey, this guy probably won't try these things on me in front of his wife, so as long as she's at the house, he'll stop when we get there. She asks him if his wife is home yet, or was she going to be coming home later before they headed out. He told her that yes, his wife and kid were home. My mom breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that his creepiness will end soon, since they were pulling into the neighborhood. As they pull up, he points out which house is his. It was at that moment that my mom saw that every single light in the house was turned off. Everything was pitch black. If his wife and kid were home, wouldn't they have some lights on? She then says, "Oh, I thought your wife was home." He He responds just by saying, "She is," completely coldly, not with the warmth and friendliness he displayed before. My mom starts to freak out, and she gets even more scared when she sees that he's pulling into the garage, not the driveway. They both get out of the car and he tells her to get inside. She's obviously very hesitant, and he notices this, so he presses the garage button and the garage door begins to close. Remember, there are absolutely no lights on, so it would be completely pitch dark. My mom immediately goes into flight mode and makes a run for it, rolls under the closing garage door, and bolts down the street while the guy runs after her and yells for her to come back. She ran to the nearest house and pounded on the door until they let her in. She explained the situation, and they let her call her parents. My grandpa gets a family friend to drive him to the house to pick her up. A few hours later, the guy shows up at the restaurant to apologize for the quote-unquote misunderstanding. My mom refuses to go over by him, but she catches a glance and notices that he had fresh fingernail scratches on his face. She didn't do that to him, so that means he had a run-in with someone else afterwards. My grandparents, being really traditional, didn't want trouble, so they never did anything about it. They later found out that he's never been married. Number 3. My family and I were talking one night about creepy things that we had dealt with throughout the years. My mom had recalled a story of my childhood that still gives her the heebies. We all shared smiles, and the creeped out shrugs, the "oh man, that's nuts" kind of thing. Won't forget the look on her face when she brought it up. As adults, you kind of have this idea that parents are superheroes that can't be broken. So to hear this story from my mom, it is by far the creepiest thing I had ever heard her say. When she was younger, around 23, my mom and dad were living in the Bay Area in San Francisco. They were having problems with their marriage and fighting a lot. My dad was working nights on ship, he was in the Navy, and my mom would stay home with us. So, one night, my dad and mom argue and are at each other's throats to the point my mom leaves. She lived about 6 blocks away from a 7-Eleven and went to go get cigarettes. As she was walking, she noticed there was a car following her. The streets were narrow, so she stopped and waited for the driver to pass. Only he didn't, and just stayed put right in the middle of the street. She said it was about 2 a.m. when she was out there, so there wasn't much traffic, foot or auto, in the area. She just continued on, as did the driver of this van. She said, he had a scuzzy beard, and this look I'll never forget, like a kid who is surprised to get what he wants on Christmas. She kept going, walking at first, picking up speed, and finally into a dead sprint, the driver still keeping pace, through a schoolyard to get through the block and into the 7-Eleven. My mom was a cross-country runner in high school and kept in shape throughout her 20s. Running was her thing. As soon as she hopped the fence, he turned down a side street and was gone. She went and brought her smokes and stepped outside to light one when she noticed that the van was parked outside of the gas station across the street and facing her direction. She started to sprint down the road. His lights flipped on and he gave chase. She was cutting through yards, hopping fences, yelling for people to wake up and trying her best to get noticed by someone. He was, quote-unquote, relentless. I had already pissed myself because I knew he could catch me in that van. He had rolled down the window by this time, yelling things at her like, "Keep running, little bunny," and "Go ahead, tire yourself out." He had one of those voices you hear on TV, like the announcers of scary movies back in the 80s. The kind of voice that makes your skin crawl. She sprinted into a mall parking lot where there was a Waffle House. Police were known for being there at all hours of the night. He followed all the way up to where he could see police cars and peeled out. My mother talked to the police, giving a description and the plate to the police. The next morning, she saw his picture on the news. They had been in custody for the murder of a young woman in a nearby park. His MO was to duct tape, rape the victim, and then superglue her nose shut with the tape still on her mouth. She said she was never the same since. On a side note, my mom is a fucking boss. Hey everybody, I'm Bella Deadwood. Thank you so much for your support in the last video. From now on, I'll be uploading every Sunday. And of course, if you have any suggestions for future videos or how to make my storytelling better, please leave it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. And for now, I'll leave you with your nightmares. Bye guys.